The water burned my skin, but I didn't care. Steam curled around me in the cramped bathroom of my Brooklyn apartment, the kind of place where the walls seemed to lean in and whisper your secrets back. I was 25, drowning in the weight of a truth I'd never spoken aloud. Not to him, not to anyone. My name is Caleb, a graphic designer scraping by in Bed-Stuy, with skin the color of midnight and a heart that beat too fast whenever Javier was around. Javier, my best friend since our freshman year at NYU, was everything I wasn't. Confident, charming, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and make it brighter. At 26, he was a freelance photographer, his lens always chasing beauty in the chaos of New York. His laugh was my favorite sound, his dark eyes my favorite view. But he was straight, always had been, and I'd spent years burying my feelings for him, convincing myself friendship was enough. That night, I stood under the shower, letting the heat scald away the ache of another day spent pretending. We'd just come back from a gallery opening in Williamsburg, where Javier had flirted with a curator named Elena, all easy smiles and casual touches. I'd watched, silent, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. Jealousy? Longing? Both? The water couldn't wash it away. Then I heard the bathroom door creak open. Caleb. Javier's voice cut through the steam, sharp and unsteady. My heart lurched. I froze, hands braced against the tiled wall, water streaming down my face. The shower curtain was thin, barely a barrier, and I could make out his silhouette through it, a familiar outline that made my pulse race. Javi, what the hell? I called out, my voice rough, trying to sound casual despite the panic clawing at me. I'm in the shower, man. I know. His voice was closer now, too close, like he was standing just outside the curtain. I need to talk to you. Now. My breath caught. Javier wasn't the impulsive type. He planned his shots, his words, his life with precision. This him barging in, his voice trembling, wasn't him. I turned off the water, the sudden silence deafening. Can it wait like 5 minutes? No, the word was final, raw. It can't. I grabbed a towel, wrapping it around my waist, my hands shaking as I pulled back the curtain. There he was, standing in the middle of my tiny bathroom, his white shirt clinging to his frame from the humidity, his dark hair falling into his eyes. Those eyes, usually so steady, were wild, searching mine like he was seeing me for the first time. Javi, what's going on? I asked, stepping out, the cold tile biting my feet. My voice was steadier than I felt, but my heart was a drumbeat in my chest. He took a step closer, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne, the one I'd teased him about buying because it was too fancy for a guy who lived in cargo shorts. His jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought he might turn and leave. But then he spoke, and his words shattered everything I thought I knew. I'm in love with you, Caleb. The air left the room. My knees buckled, and I gripped the sink to steady myself, the towel slipping slightly. What? I whispered, certain I'd misheard. You're straight. I thought I was, he said, his voice breaking. I've spent years thinking I was, but it's you. It's always been you. The world tilted. I stared at him, my best friend, the guy I'd loved in silence for years, and tried to process the impossible. Javier, the man who'd dated women, who'd never given me a hint of this, was standing in my bathroom, confessing something that could unravel everything. My mind raced, hope, fear, disbelief colliding like a storm. Javi, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You can't just say that. Not like this. I know, he said, stepping closer, his hand reaching out but stopping short of touching me. I know it's crazy. I know I've been blind. But tonight, at the gallery, watching you laugh with that artist guy, I felt like I was losing you. And I couldn't breathe, Caleb. I couldn't. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But years of hiding had built walls I didn't know how to tear down. You're confused, I said, shaking my head. You're not, you don't mean this. I do. His voice was fierce now, his eyes locked on mine. I've never been more sure of anything. The bathroom felt too small, the air too thick. I backed up, my hip hitting the sink, and Javier followed, not letting the distance grow. Why now? I demanded, my voice cracking. Why here? Why like this? Because I'm done pretending, he said. I'm done acting like you're just my friend when you're everything. I didn't know what to say. My heart screamed to pull him close, to believe every word. But my head warned me of the risk. What if this was a mistake? What if he woke up tomorrow and regretted it? What if I lost him forever? Say something, he pleaded, his voice soft, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard. Please, Caleb. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Instead, I reached out, my hand trembling as it brushed his arm. His skin was warm, real, and for the first time in years, I let myself hope. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the cracked blinds of my apartment, painting stripes across the hardwood floor. I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying Javier's words in my head. He'd left after our talk, giving me space to think, he'd said, but his absence felt like a weight. I hadn't slept. How could I, when the man I'd loved for years had turned my world upside down? Javier and I had met in a photography class at NYU, bonding over late-night pizza and debates about whether film was better than digital. He was Puerto Rican, raised in the Bronx, with a family that filled every room with laughter and chaos. I was quieter, a black kid from Atlanta who'd moved to New York chasing dreams of art and freedom. We'd clicked instantly, two opposites who somehow fit. He'd been there through my coming out to my parents, through their silence that followed. I'd been there when his dad passed, holding his hand at the funeral. We were each other's constant, but I'd never dared dream he could feel what I felt. Now everything was different. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through our texts. Years of inside jokes, memes and plans. Nothing hinted at this. Had I missed signs? Or was this really as sudden for him as it felt for me? My phone buzzed. A text from Javier. Can we talk? I'm outside. My heart leapt. I threw on a hoodie and opened the door to find him on the stoop, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, his expression a mix of hope and nerves. Hey, he said, his voice soft. Hey, I replied, stepping outside. The autumn air was crisp, the street alive with the hum of Brooklyn. Kids laughing, cars honking, life moving on while I stood on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. I meant what I said, Javier started, his eyes searching mine. I know it's a lot, and I know I've got no right to just drop this on you, but I couldn't keep it in anymore. I swallowed, my throat tight. Javi, this changes everything. You get that, right? If this goes wrong, I lose you. You won't, he said, stepping closer. I'm not going anywhere. I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. What about Elena, or all the women you've dated? You've never even looked at a guy before. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know. I don't have answers for everything, Caleb. All I know is how I feel when I'm with you. Like I'm home. His words hit me like a punch, stealing my breath. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth in his eyes, the same truth I'd buried for years. But before I could respond, a voice called out from across the street. Javier. Yo, "You coming to the shoot today?" It was Marcus, a mutual friend and fellow photographer, waving from a coffee shop. Javier waved back, but his eyes stayed on me. "Tonight," he said quietly. "Meet me at Prospect Park. 7. Just give me a chance to show you I mean this." I nodded, unable to speak, and watched him walk away, his silhouette blending into the morning light. My heart was a battlefield, hope against fear, love against logic. But as I stood there, the world buzzing around me, I knew one thing. I couldn't run from this. Not anymore. The sun dipped low as I walked through Prospect Park, the autumn leaves crunching under my sneakers. The air carried the scent of earth and fading summer, and my stomach churned with nerves. Javier had asked me to meet him here, at the spot by the lake where we'd spent countless evenings talking about nothing and everything. But tonight felt different, charged, like the air before a storm. I spotted him near the water, his camera in hand, snapping shots of the sunset reflecting off the lake. At 26, Javier had a way of making even the ordinary look extraordinary through his lens. His dark hair caught the golden light, and when he turned and saw me, his smile was hesitant but warm. "You came," he said, lowering the camera. "Didn't have much choice?" I replied, shoving my hands in my pockets to hide their trembling. "You kind of blew up my world last night." He winced, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "I'm sorry for the way it came out. I couldn't wait anymore." We sat on a bench, the same one we'd carved our initials into years ago during a drunken night of bad decisions. The wood was weathered now, but I could still trace the faint C+J with my fingertip. Neither of us spoke for a moment, the silence heavy with unspoken questions. "Caleb," he started, his voice low, "I know this is messy. I know I've got no right to ask you to take a chance on this. But I've been thinking about you for months, maybe longer, and I didn't even realize what it meant until now." "Months?" I echoed, my heart racing. "Javi, you've never said anything. You've never acted like this was even a possibility." "I didn't know how to," he admitted, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "I grew up in a family where this wasn't something we talked about. My dad would have lost it, and I told myself I was straight because it was easier. But you," he looked at me, his eyes raw, "you make it impossible to keep lying to myself." I wanted to reach for him, to bridge the gap between us, but fear held me back. "What if you change your mind?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "What if you wake up and decide this isn't what you want? I can't lose you, Javi. Not as my friend." He reached out then, his hand finding mine, his touch warm and steady. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I don't have all the answers, but I know I want this. I want us." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I let myself imagine it. A world where Javier and I were more than friends, where I didn't have to hide how I felt. But the weight of reality pressed down. "What about your family?" I asked. "Your friends? You've got a whole life built around being the guy everyone expects. You ready to blow that up?" He hesitated, and that pause cut deeper than I expected. "I don't know," he admitted. "My mom, she's old school, and my brothers, they'd have questions. But I'm not ashamed of this, Caleb. I'm just figuring it out." I pulled my hand back, the doubt creeping in again. "Figuring it out isn't enough," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "This isn't an experiment. This is my life." "I know," he said quickly, his eyes pleading. "I'm not playing around. I just need time to do this right." Time. The word felt like a lifeline and a trap all at once. I stood, needing space, needing to breathe. "I need to think, Javi," I said, turning toward the path. "I can't just jump into this." "Caleb, wait," he started. But I was already walking away, the lake blurring in my vision as I fought the urge to turn back. The next few days were a haze. I threw myself into work, designing logos for a startup that didn't deserve my focus. My apartment felt too quiet without Javier's laughter, his constant presence. We texted, but they were short, cautious messages, nothing like the easy banter we'd always had. I missed him, but I was terrified of what it meant to let him in. On Thursday, I got a call from my sister, Maya, who lived in Chicago. She was 28, the only person in my family who'd embraced me fully when I came out. "You sound like crap," she said, her voice crackling through the phone. "What's going on?" I told her everything. Javier's confession, my fear, the way my heart felt like it was tearing itself apart. She listened, quiet, until I finished. "Caleb," she said, "you've loved this guy forever, and now he's saying he feels the same. Why are you running?" "Because it's not that simple," I snapped. "He's straight. Or he was. What if he's just confused? What if I let myself believe him and he bails?" "Then you hurt," she said bluntly. "But you're already hurting, aren't you? At least this way you get a chance at something real." Her words stuck with me, gnawing at the edges of my doubt. That night, I went to a bar in the East Village with Marcus and a few other friends. Javier was there, his camera slung around his neck, laughing with a group of photographers. He looked up, and our eyes met across the crowded room. For a moment, it was just us, the noise fading away. Then he smiled, and I felt the pull of him, stronger than ever. I made my way over, my heart pounding. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice low. He nodded, leading me to a quiet corner. "I've been thinking about you," he said, his voice soft. "I hate this distance between us." "Me too," I admitted. "But I'm scared, Javi. I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I," he said, his hand brushing mine. "But I want to try. With you." Before I could respond, Marcus called out, waving us over for a group photo. Javier hesitated, then squeezed my hand. "We'll figure it out," he whispered. "Together." As we rejoined the group, I felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. Maybe this was crazy. Maybe it would break us. But for the first time, I let myself believe it might be worth the risk. The bar's neon lights buzzed overhead, casting a warm glow over the crowd. Javier's hand lingered near mine as we stood with our friends, the air thick with laughter and the clink of glasses. But beneath the noise, there was a current between us. Electric, unspoken, pulling us closer even as I fought to keep my guard up. We left the bar around midnight, walking through the East Village's narrow streets, our shoulders brushing. The city was alive, pulsing with energy, but all I could feel was Javier beside me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft, cutting through the hum of the night. "I don't know," I admitted, stopping under a streetlight. Its glow caught the edges of his face, highlighting the worry in his eyes. It's a lot." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "But I meant what I said, Caleb. I'm in this." I wanted to believe him, but the weight of years spent hiding my feelings made it hard to trust. "What happens when your family finds out?" I asked. "Or when people start talking? You ready for that?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "I don't know how they'll react," he admitted. "My mom's Catholic, you know that. She's got her ideas about how things should be. But I'm not living for her anymore. I want to live for me, for us." His words stirred something deep in me, hope, yes, but also fear. I'd spent so long protecting myself, building walls to keep my heart safe. Letting Javier in meant risking everything. I need time, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to know this is real. It is, he said, his hand finding mine, his fingers intertwining with my own. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through me, and for a moment, I let myself lean into it. We stood there, under the streetlight, two men in their mid-20s, caught in a moment that felt both fragile and infinite. The next week was a blur of stolen glances and tentative steps. Javier started texting me more, not just memes but messages that felt like confessions. Saw a sunset today and wished you were here to see it. Can't stop thinking about you. Each one chipped away at my doubt, but I still held back, afraid of falling too fast. We met up for coffee in Williamsburg, at a small cafe with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Javier was already there when I arrived, his camera on the table, his smile lighting up the room. I got you a latte, he said, sliding a cup toward me. Thanks, I said, sitting across from him. Our knees brushed under the table, and I felt the familiar jolt of his presence. You been shooting anything good? Trying to, he said, his eyes on me. But I keep getting distracted. I laughed, but my heart was racing. Javi, we need to talk about this. About what it means. I know, he said, leaning forward. I've been thinking about it non-stop. I talked to my sister, Sophia, last night. She's the only one in my family I've told so far. My stomach dropped. What did she say? He hesitated, then smiled. She said she's not surprised. Apparently, she's been waiting for me to figure it out. I raised an eyebrow. Figure what out? That I'm crazy about you, he said, his voice low, his eyes locked on mine. She said it's been obvious for years. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Years, I said, shaking my head. You've got a hell of a way of hiding it. I was hiding it from myself, he said, his hand reaching for mine across the table. But I'm done with that. I want this, Caleb. I want you. The cafe faded away, the world narrowing to just us. I squeezed his hand, my heart pounding. Okay, I said, the word feeling like a leap. Let's try this. His smile was brighter than the sun, and for the first time, I let myself believe we could make this work. But reality wasn't as kind as that moment. A few days later, Javier invited me to a family dinner at his mom's place in the Bronx. I'd been there before countless times, but always as his friend. This time, the weight of what we were becoming made every step feel heavier. His mom, Rosa, greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a hug that smelled of jasmine and home-cooked arroz con pollo. But as the night went on, I caught the glances, Sophia's knowing smile, his brother Diego's raised eyebrow. Javier was quieter than usual, his hand brushing mine under the table but never lingering. After dinner, Rosa pulled me aside, her eyes searching mine. Caleb, she said, her voice gentle but firm. You're like family, always will be, but something's different, isn't it? I froze, my heart in my throat. What do you mean? I asked, playing dumb. She smiled, but there was a sadness in it. I see the way you look at my Javier, and the way he looks at you. I didn't know what to say. Before I could respond, Javier appeared, his expression tense. Ma, can we talk? He said, his voice steady but laced with nerves. We stepped outside, the cool night air a relief after the warmth of the apartment. You told her? I asked, my voice low. Not yet, he said, running a hand through his hair. But I'm going to. I need to do it right. I nodded, But the doubt was back, sharper now. Javi, if this is too much. It's not. He cut in, his eyes fierce. I'm not backing down. I just need you to trust me. I wanted to more than anything. But as we stood there, the city humming around us, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of something that could break us both. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk between hope and fear. Javier and I were really trying to figure out what us meant. We went on quiet dates, stealing moments in dive bars and late-night walks through Central Park. Each touch, each glance, felt like a promise, but the shadow of his family's expectations loomed large. One night, we ended up at my apartment, sprawled on the couch with takeout containers scattered around us. Javier was flipping through my sketchbook, his fingers tracing the lines of a portrait I'd drawn of him months ago. "This is incredible," he said, his voice soft. "You make me look, I don't know, better than I am." "You're not so bad," I teased, nudging his shoulder. But my heart wasn't in it. I could feel the weight of the conversation we hadn't had, the one about his mom, his brothers, the world outside our bubble. He set the sketchbook down, turning to face me. "Caleb, I told Sophia everything," he said. "She's on our side. But I still haven't told my mom. Or Diego." I nodded, my throat tight. "You don't have to rush it," I said, even though part of me wanted him to shout it from the rooftops. "But you can't keep this, a secret forever." "I know," he said, his hand finding mine. "I'm going to tell them. Soon. I need you to know I'm all in." His words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase the fear. I leaned in, kissing him softly, letting the moment anchor me. His lips were warm, hesitant at first, then sure, and for a while the world outside didn't matter. But the world always finds a way in. A week later, we were at a gallery opening in Chelsea, Javier's photos on display. He was in his element, charming the crowd, his laughter filling the room. I stood in the corner, sipping a drink, watching him shine. Then I saw Diego, his older brother, weaving through the crowd, his expression unreadable. "Caleb," Diego said, pulling me aside. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. "What's up?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He didn't mince words. "I know about you and Javi. Sophia told me." I froze, my grip tightening on my glass. "Okay," I said slowly. And I don't get it," he said, his voice low but sharp. "He's never been into guys. Now he's throwing away everything. His family, his future. For what? A phase?" "It's not a phase," I said, my voice steady despite the anger rising in me. "He loves me." Diego's eyes narrowed. "You sure about that? Or are you just hoping?" His words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Before I could respond, Javier appeared, his face paling as he saw us. "Diego, what's going on?" he asked, his voice tense. "You tell me," Diego said, crossing his arms. "You gonna tell Ma you're messing around with your best friend?" Javier's jaw clenched. "It's not messing around," he said, his voice low but fierce. "I love him." The room seemed to still, the hum of the gallery fading away. Diego stared at him, then shook his head. "You're making a mistake," he said, turning to leave. Javier grabbed my arm, pulling me outside into the cool night air. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice shaking. "I didn't know Sophia told him." "It's okay," I lied, my heart pounding. "But Javi, this is what I was afraid of. Your family." "I don't care," he cut in, his eyes blazing. "I care about you. I'll deal with Diego. I'll deal with all of it." But as we stood there, the city roaring around us. I couldn't shake Diego's words. Was I just hoping? Was this too good to be true? The next day, Javier showed up at my apartment, his eyes red-rimmed, his camera bag slung over his shoulder. "I told my mom," he said, his voice raw. "Last night after the gallery." My heart stopped. What did she say? He looked down, his hands fidgeting. "She cried, said she doesn't understand, but she loves me. She needs time." I reached for him, pulling him into a hug. He buried his face in my shoulder, and I felt the weight of everything he was carrying. "We'll figure it out," I whispered, echoing his words from weeks ago. But as we held each other, I knew it wouldn't be easy. Love was never just love. It was courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to fight for something fragile and beautiful. And for the first time, I believed we could. Months passed, and our love grew in the quiet spaces. Late-night talks, shared coffee in the morning, his hand in mine as we navigated the city. But the world wasn't always kind. Diego barely spoke to Javier, and Rosa, though trying, struggled to understand. Friends whispered, some supportive, others skeptical. Yet Javier never wavered. He showed up every day, proving his love in ways that went beyond words. One evening, we sat in Prospect Park, the same bench from that pivotal night. The air was colder now, winter creeping in, but Javier's warmth beside me was enough. He pulled out his camera, showing me a photo he'd taken of us weeks ago, laughing in the rain. "This," he said, his voice soft, "is what I want forever." I looked at him, my heart full. "Forever's a long time," I said, teasing but serious. "I know," he said, his eyes steady, "and I want every second of it with you." We kissed, the world fading away, and I realized something. Love wasn't just the thrill of a confession or the heat of a moment. It was this building a life together, choosing each other despite the odds. Javier had surprised me in the shower that night, but what he said next had changed everything. It gave me the courage to believe in us, in a future where we could be unapologetically ourselves. As we walked back through the park, hand in hand, the city lights glittering around us, I knew we'd face more challenges, but we'd face them together, and that was enough. Years later, I'd look back on that night in the shower as the moment everything shifted. Javier and I built a life, a messy, beautiful life. We fought, we laughed, we grew. His family came around slowly, imperfectly. Rosa learned to love us as we were, and Diego, though stubborn, softened over time. Our friends became our family, cheering us on through every milestone. Love, I learned, wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when it was hard, even when the world didn't understand. Javier had been my straight best friend, but he became so much more. A partner, a home, a reason to believe in the impossible. And in the end, that was the greatest surprise of all.